It's a very special kind of tone, isn't it? It's a tone that isn't prophetic and ecstatic like Nietzsche, doesn't have the self-conscious rightness and richness of a Goethe. It's a very tender, sober, humane, human tone, forged in the fires of real life and constantly turning back to real life for its evidence and for its inspiration. And so I think it's a tone that is peculiarly suited to our time, a time in which all ideologies are failing, all agendas are crumbling. It's a tone we can trust, it's a tone we can rely on. I wondered if you'd like to read that wonderful passage that Hesse gives us, that really describes what a poet is and what kind of a poet he is.
We all right now live with a terrible case of poetry deficiency disorder.
Yes.
And the poetic life and the value of the poet has put so far on the periphery.
Yes.
And with all the texting and with all the devaluation of the word, I'm thinking of Jacques Ellul's The Humiliation of the Word. I'm thinking of, there are plenty of thinkers that realize what the price we pay for commodified language.
Yes.
And what we have gained on the horizontal level, that we can send something that isn't really a word anymore, it isn't a message anymore either. But it is sort of a word item that we send within seconds across the planet. But we have forgotten about the vertical axis of language. And we almost are not able to access it anymore. We are so obsessed with the quantity of text that we can send as fast as we can, as much as we can, that we forget about the roots and the blossoms of the words. Yes. The vertical axis where the roots, the meaning comes out of the rhyme, comes out of the sound, comes out of the rhythms, and it comes out of the spoken word, and you need a bard to brings the spoken word into the community.
Yes.
And that is then the live prophet. So, and then the blossoms, of course, those are the metaphors. Those are the analogies. And then you have a full word.
Yes.
Where the horizontal axis and the vertical axis is fully present.
And a word that's pregnant with new possibilities, that
That's
engenders deep, deep feeling, deep thought, that creates a kind of sacred intimacy between beings.
And then you have messages that can find a crack between whatever has been hardened as an ideology, that has ever been dogmatized, whatever has been sort of already established, categorized, classified, functionalized,
right,
and has been abused with that terrible word of the ultimate efficiency.
right.
And when whatever the original inspiration was has been totally used up in complete efficiency, then you look at these empty words.
Right.
There is no, I like the Canadian philosopher Robert Bringhurst, and a number of other people actually speak, these words there are now, it's like the air is out of it.
Yes.
And so when Hesse talks about really, what is the appointed office of a poet? It's a very, very important office. But it doesn't come with some PhD certification.
Or a title.
And where you can talk from an authoritarian point of view that other people have to obey you because you basically have cornered the market. It's kind of it's like whatever you say is, so somebody has to obey it, whoever is
right.
in your sphere of influence, So yeah, this way of thinking about another kind of authority. It's actually authority of the one who listens deep into the word and then gets in touch with his or her own imagination, and relying on the imagination, which hopefully is not polluted with a lot of fake metaphors, which basically are offered and fake analogies, abusive analogies, as it is in advertising, where you have positively charged images like the beauty of a young woman or
addictive images.
That's right. But it is a completely different reaching in to, well, what Rilke says then at one point, in what has not yet been said. Rilke at once said, I am proud of listening into what yet not has been said. And that's the job, really. That's the profession, that's the vocation. And that becomes then the invocation of the poet, in order to bring forth the unsaid and that which is still considered unsayable.
And unsaid and unsayable in all human beings.
That's right.
So the poet does that on behalf of everyone.
That's right.
To keep alive this mysterious creativity of the poet, poetic force, the Holy Spirit that is constantly dissolving forms to try and release us from the agendas that keep us captive.
That's right.
Yes.
So he is the one who digs the new water well,
yes,
goes to the source and finds then incredible treasures, because the body of language itself is actually infinite. And there's so much wealth in there. And that is the wealth of the soul.
yes.
And it's bestowed freely by Spirit if a person is willing to dig that well. And most of the time it means that you have to separate from a well-established community, or I would rather call it maybe a pseudo-community,
Yes.
where categories have been established and ways of doing things are normal and regular, and someone who offends them is either a rebel or is weird.
Yes.
And the norm goes after these people. And so you have a poet usually go through a long period of solitude, and Hesse has a number of poems on that, that it's something that over the long run, though, gives you a very rich harvest. But initially, you don't get invited to the next party. You know, you're the person who
Yes.
sort of is all by himself, all by herself, for quite a while. So let me quote a little bit here what Hesse has
This
to
is
say.
so beautiful.
Because in this book, The Seasons of the Soul, I didn't want it to be just a poetry book. I wanted it to be a book that really offers food, nourishment for the soul, for the person. And so I brought in some quotes from Hesse's prose, where, like here he says, in that second chapter in the book, which is entitled To Imagine is to Inspire, he says, today I'm more aware than ever that I stand alone in my role as a dreamer. I'm conscious of this fact, and I see it not only as a curse, but an appointed office. I'm neither a minister nor a therapist, and I act without authority or entitlement, but I strengthen each and every individual to the extent that I'm able to understand him in those aspects which distinguish him from the norm. And I try to show him the meaning of his uniqueness.
So beautiful
Yeah.
that it's all about the other for Hesse.
That's right.
He goes deep into himself, not to advertise the glorious richnesses of his own imagination,
Yeah.
but to offer things to others with a simplicity and a tenderness that evokes what is most unique in them. And this is a dangerous activity. You remember that other quote in which he really does go to the heart of why great poets are so, so important, but also so dangerous. Dangerous because if the enterprise of poetry succeeds, it does create unique individuals. It does create people who cannot be tamed or disciplined into an adherence to mass psychosis. It'd be wonderful if you could read that.
Well, Hesse says, in the end, all art, and especially poetry, has only a raison d'être if it offers more than entertainment. But it has a direct effect on life, provides solace, clarification, counsel, aid, and fortification in life's struggles, and helps overcome what is difficult in life. Great poets feel into the future and with most sensitive antennas and live out ahead of us a piece of future development, a yet unrealized potential. Poets and philosophers, if they do not sell out to please,
Yes.
but have the courage to be themselves, represent the most precious and dangerous models a culture can have. They don't supply a ready-made set of duties and doctrines to be followed, but they show and teach the opposite, the path to individuality and personal conscience.